What's up, gang? What up? Here we go. It's episode 50. That's a pretty poppin' number. You know what I'm saying? Woo! 50? Who thought we would have made it this far? Come on. Pretty tight. Let's vibe for a second on this song, and then we'll get poppin' here. All right. So, PCH cruising. My girl, she snooze. That's Jaden Smith. This is him and Willow Smith on this track. I don't know why I picked these songs, guys, but it's what I've been listening to, oddly enough, lately. You know what it is? It's cruising, and I think that's actually relevant to this episode. And because sometimes you gotta vibe. I mean, this might be a stretch, but we're cruising sometimes, you know? We're just soaking it in sometimes in life, and we don't always have the crystal clear vision, you know, of where we're going. And maybe we don't always need one. Maybe it's nice to sometimes just cruise around. And, you know, I think it's important to develop yourself and figure out what you're, you know, going to be driving towards eventually. But I think also this exploratory phase where you're trying things out is important, and it's good to be comfortable in that position. You know, this is something I've just kind of digested and realized after this conversation that you're about to hear. You know, if you asked me when I was a year into my training, parkour, to make the obvious analogy here, you know, what are you doing? Where are you going with this? And like, what's your movement all about? You know, I wouldn't have, first of all, known what to tell you. And certainly I was just like trying to be better. If there was any like one thing, I just want to be good. I just want to be expressing myself. I want to be becoming healthier and stronger as like a person. And I think that's kind of the one thing that's like stays true no matter what you're doing. And I think that's why, you know, if staying true to that is actually what allowed me to accomplish. And, you know, again, I didn't know what was in store for me. If I was aiming at like certain kinds of, you know, if I had aimed at some of the things that I ended up achieving, I don't know that I would have felt confident going towards those goals. But I was able to do some crazy things in film and in movement by just staying focused on, you know, the things that I was feeling the growth out of from parkour. And so, you know, I'm still on that path, I guess. And that's more or less what this episode is about, is that path of personal growth and, you know, how it relates, I guess, to your creative expression and what you're doing. Today's guest is Anabel Roca. And Anabel is someone who's on that path, you know, to say the least. And she is someone, you know, she dances, she does like all types of different movement really, and like expresses herself in that medium physically, but also, you know, is branching out into different areas. And I found out that she paints and like does all kinds of things. But, you know, basically the reason why I had reached out to her to come on is because I know that, you know, she's doing a lot of this personal growth work, you know, and just like she's driven by that same force of like wanting to better herself, become a more strong, capable version of herself, you know, that good stuff. And also I think she shares that not necessarily knowing exactly how it's going to work out right now, and like where exactly she, you know, it's not a crystal clear 10-year vision that we have for ourselves. That stuff's really hard to get clear on. But again, I think, you know, if there was a nugget to take away is maybe, you know, you got to make sure I mean, this is something I maybe just thought of, but certainly this conversation helped me get there, is just that, you know, following that drive for growth and stuff. And that's something that we share. And I think you guys will get something out of this, because I certainly did. Again, Anabel does that work. And I think it's great to like bring people on to share their insights. You know, I'm grateful that she wanted to come on and share her insights into doing that work with me, and of course with you guys. You know, that stuff never goes away, and hopefully you gain something out of it by listening to this conversation. Yeah, I guess that's it, baby. Let's do this. Without further ado, let's get into it. Anabel Roca, get all the info in the description, boys and girls. We'll see you next week.
I'll dance. Sometimes I just put the camera on and I just kind of try to forget that it's there. Like I'll put it in a spot that captures the whole room, and then I just kind of will move for like a good amount of time, and then I'll go back and watch it and choose something if it's interesting, or kind of watch like what I did. But I try to put it on and just kind of forget it's there, so that I'm watching my process. I'm not like performing for the camera, you know?
I don't know, because that's the opposite of what I do. Like, I mean, at least I mean, that's interesting, because maybe I'll start trying more like that. But usually I don't even pull my phone out until I know I want to film something. It's like a very different approach with parkour, at least, where it's just like, all right, here's the thing. And sometimes I will use the camera as a boost to like help me perform. Like, I'm like, all right, here's a little pressure. My friend's holding it.
Right.
Now I have to go. Let's do this.
Right.
And yeah, so it's kind of a different style, I guess. But that's...
Well, it's just a different
just
way
different.
of using
like, I want to
the tool.
document me doing a challenge.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, I thought of a challenge that I think is cool, and I want to see me do it.
And it's worth capturing.
Worth capturing, yeah.
Yeah.
But maybe I've done what you've done before. I've like done some things like that where I've time lapsed myself, or like, but it's not my usual process, my go-to.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's interesting because there's like a shift of mindset you have to have. Like, you're like, okay, I'm videoing, but I have to forget that I'm videoing, but I know that I'm videoing, you know? But it's like how, I'm not quite sure the exact name of this experiment, but where the electrons behave differently when they're being watched versus not being watched.
I don't really understand all that. That's all that quantum physics stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Super interesting stuff, you know, and I totally notice it in myself where if I'm just being, you know, with nothing around me, I'm not trying to show anything or whatever, like there's a different state that I'm in, you know, and I try to see myself in that light, which I think is why I video myself the way I do, because I'm trying to really see me. I don't want to just see like when I'm doing the best, or like when I'm, you know, whatever, but it's like, yeah, what's the process? And often like the process is way more interesting than the footage of when I'm like, I'm going to video this thing and I'm going to try to make it look cool, because then there's like all this pressure, and then it's like, okay, fuck.
What about the process is most interesting to you?
Which part of it?
Well, I don't know, just like what's fascinating, because for someone who doesn't do that that way so much, you said that the process is more interesting typically than the little segment that you would, you know, post about or show to your friends, like, look at this sequence or whatever. Is it just that it's revealing the way that you approach things? Do you do things that you like, I can't believe I did that, or that's how I do that?
Yeah, watching myself think through something, or like watching the process of like coming up to an idea, and then kind of sitting in the pocket of the idea, and then developing it, and then seeing what develops if I give it time, you know, and sit with that, whatever. Like if it's dance, it's like a movement or a concept. If I sit with it long enough and I play with it long enough, what it becomes, and then I see the whole, like from beginning to end, you know. But it's more the beginning that I'm interested in, is like, what does it look like to think? What is like a new idea look and feel like, you know? And then and then what part of that feeling do you take with you as you develop the idea? And then what changes, and what is the result, you know?
And if you found any bits of like revelation in there, or like in the way that you approach, or do your ideas come from the same place, or do they drastically morph? I mean, describe maybe for people that don't know, because even I'm just like, what is like an idea that what is an idea for you that you're exploring initially
right now? Oh yeah, I mean,
or is it like all ideas? Is it a movement idea? Is it the same thing?
I think that that's what I'm trying to understand about myself right now is like, are ideas that I'm having interesting? And if they are, do I have the patience to like give it the time to unravel and grow on it? I have ideas all the time with dance. It'll come just, I'm moving, I'm like freestyling. And then there's this thing and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And sometimes I find like a style of movement that I'm not well versed in. Like I'll say like popping. Like I've never trained popping. Like I've never, like I've taken one class and I'll sit and I'll watch it and I'll try to mimic it. But sometimes in my own movement, I'll run into like a way that I want to express and it's like through that medium. And then it's okay playing with that for a while. What was your question?
I was just curious. Well, I mean, what I'm thinking about now is like, does it just like what you're trying to find these answers? Like, are they specific to your movement or do they extrapolate to some bigger things?
They extrapolate to
That's
what
I was
everything.
picking up on, I guess.
Things.
But I was like,
yeah,
because I think there's like this sort of saying, I guess it's like, all right, the way you do one thing is kind of the way you do almost everything, you know?
And that scares me.
And it's terrifying, right?
It scares me so much.
Because then you look at that and you're like, how am I doing that? And then especially if you're really looking, if you're honest, I mean,
I'm so attentive to detail, you know, and that I know that about myself when I think about that saying. I'm like, okay, like I feel like I have to kind of like when I walk into a room, I look at everything where it is, like I see how it's like organized or
oh damn, what do you think? Give us the assessment. Give us the assessment of High Drop Studios real quick. Break it down for the listeners.
No, I like it in here. It's just like it's like someone started to take incentive on organizing and then just kind of made it like how you move efficiently through the room and like an efficient use of space. And it's not too like you have some art on the wall, but it's not like
I painted
I'm putting art yeah, you painted that?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's an original B. Dougie.
I like it. Tell us about it.
Well, we've discussed it actually on the podcast before,
okay.
But that particular painting I think is representative of this era of my life where I'm in between fire and water states and I'm kind of like playing with them both.
Yeah.
And so I kind of have this volcanic island image next to some ocean stuff.
Can I just ask one question about the painting?
Yeah.
What time of your life, like how long ago did you draw that or paint it?
That was no more than 2 months ago.
So you paint?
That's one painting I've done, yeah.
But you paint?
But I've painted once. And like it's not like I guess I paint now. Yeah, you could say that.
It's something you've chosen to dabble in as a mode of expression.
Yes.
Lately. That's cool.
It was an event. Like it was like a friend of mine who is a painter. Like legit. She paints and she's amazing. Her name's Megan. Yeah. And maybe I'm trying to get her on here one day.
Yeah.
She hosted us and she just was like, I want everyone to try it. Because she knows like the power of it, I guess. And like, I didn't understand it but even after just one painting, I was like, wow, this is a really interesting way to express yourself because it's just like what we're just talking about, the way that it comes out, especially the style that she had us do it. We didn't have an idea. You just start painting. You start putting oil on canvas and then, or I don't know if it's acrylic, whatever. And then something kind of reveals itself. And all of a sudden you're like, well, I have this painting in front of me. And then you have to kind of go, what does that mean? Why did I paint it that way?
Yeah. And does it mean something, you know, I don't know. Because when you say that, it's like, that's like the process of life, you know, you're going, and then you kind of start to string some things together. And then it's like, okay, I'm stringing these things together. Am I stringing things together that I'm seeing? Did I create what I'm seeing to string together, you know?
Ooh, I don't know.
Or is it just like, am I seeing patterns and then putting them together and then that's what my life becomes, you know? Like, oh, I'm good at this. I did this as a kid. So, my parent my mom put me into dance.
Dougie, or
right?
is this a copy? is me imitating another painting? Because in a way, it's both.
Well, there's that, or just like, does it mean anything that you chose that came out of you? You know, that whatever, like, line or image, you know. Yeah, we could
go all day.
Is this going anywhere?
I mean, I don't know. Like, I think we can drop the painting maybe, but I think like the specifics on it at least. But I think the choices. Yeah, I mean, how do you? Because I think that's a lot of what we're doing lately. Like, that's what I'm doing in a lot of ways with the podcast is I'm taking a magnifying glass to the way I do things, like the way I'm like, again, like I listen to a lot of these, most of them afterwards, and like just same way that you're video journaling and things, it's like, it's in a way for me to examine how I think, how I do things. I'm wondering if like that's almost the way that like technology is bolstering growth or something, or like maybe that's, if you're going to do something with it, like maybe social media and stuff, these are all okay things as long as you're like more aware of this and like really using the tool. And I guess that's maybe what I'm trying to do with it. I'm like, all right, if I'm going to interact with electronics and things all day.
Right. And it's not even just electronics. It's like social media is the ability to present yourself to a mass amount of people, you know, in this instant. And it's like, you create this page and you kind of create it and put whatever you want on there. You try to make it authentic, or you try to not make it, or you try to brand it, you know, but either way, like, you're the creator of this page. And you're interacting constantly with what you want to be putting out there versus what you really are, you know, and then use it as a tool.
The question is, real quick, is what you really are. Like, for me, I don't necessarily use Instagram to post. I use this podcast more to post about like who I really am, I think, than I use, like, for me, that this medium is better for that than Instagram is. For me, Instagram is like, it's more like a painting. Like, it's like the whole package is who I am, but I'm not trying to like be as, like, I like to make videos for a lot of my posts, or I like choose music that I like, and I put a little, I just try to express myself as a little mini edit or something. Yeah. And that's who I am in a way, but like, you have to like take it one step outside of that to realize that it's not me like being cool and shit in the video. It's like me just like enjoying the edit as much as, I don't know what I'm getting off track, but I'm just saying like posting about who you really are. Like, there's different ways to do it, I guess, is all I'm saying.
Well, yeah, there's different ways to use social. I think that would be like your personal choice. Like, you like thinking of this as like a medium of art, like a podcast. Like, this is the tool that you use to access a certain part of you. Instagram is another tool you use to access or to express or to exist in the world in another part of you, you know, and I think everyone uses it different, can use it different, you know, and that's what's so interesting about it is like, we're just starting to really grasp like what it means to have what we have with social media. You know, like, the internet has just kind of started to be in a generation long enough that we're like, what, you know, this is a whole other like parallel universe that we're carrying around. We exist in a duality now. We exist on this like internet, and we exist in reality. And you could even argue we exist like in three now, because we exist in our own self, you know, in the inner world, then you exist in the outer world, and then you exist in this like outer world.
Damn, which one are you the most?
Which am I in the most? Yeah. I think I'm, you know, oddly in the inner, like in my inner world. Inner. Well, no. Okay.
So there's four worlds now. No. So you're inside the in person that's inside you.
No. I'm in my inner world and the outer, I would say, more comfortably than the outer world.
Just like,
just existing.
That's probably the hardest one to access, right?
Is it?
I don't know.
Should it be?
I don't know if it should be, but that is like the neutral one almost, you could say. when that's the one that people are saying you should always try to get to, living in the moment. That's the one I think they're talking about, is like, you're just being. You're here experiencing, and it's all good.
Mm-hmm.
And then you dive into the inner world, you can, who knows what goes down, and like you lose yourself there, but you have to do that, I feel like, to
right, because it's like
to pilot yourself correctly.
You're always in the outer world, you know?
Yeah.
Because your body, that's where your body exists, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's interesting about the body to me, is it's carrying both worlds at one time.
Whoa.
Your
body. You're strong.
But it is. It's like,
yo, body, you're strong as hell. Doubling up. I like that though. No, just keep going. Sorry.
No, you're fine. Yeah, no, we exist, like our physical, you know, what we touch things with, that's like the physical world. But then what you're feeling when you touch something is in the inner world, you know? And yeah, like you're always, whether you want to be or not, you're always in the outer world.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're present, you're, you know, whatever. But the outer world is interesting because it's like it's like a constant performance, or like a constant statement, or like a constant expression of what is your experience of the inner and outer worlds.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like what you make, the sense you make of your own experience.
That's pretty wild. I guess it's in more or less, or not, whatever. In a lot of ways, it's always existed too, right? I mean, like, since there was artistry, could you say that the outer world has, like Picasso, his paintings are outer world, right? They're not social media posts, but they're like this third level,
right,
of like expression reflecting what he sees back towards the world,
right. It was harder to access.
Like, at least he had months between. Like, maybe now, I don't know, but they say that there's been studies now where the more time you spend on social media, the more depressed people are, and more anxiety and stuff they experience, which makes sense partially in this little theory, I think, because it's like, all right, well, you're carrying now this third world. Body's meant for two worlds, all right?
Yeah.
Sometimes three, not always three.
And not everyone, maybe, you know, like, I think about that. I think about what art used to be, or what, you know, even film used to be, or books used to be, or any, you know, you used to need to have more money, you know, equipment used to be much more expensive, less accessible. Like, now I can video something on the phone that I carry around in my pocket. I can video and post something. Before, it was like it was a, you know, production. Like, you want to film something, like, do you know someone with a camera, you know? And even, you know, going back before, when cameras were even harder to access, is like, do you have the money and the network to know someone with a camera, with the kind of equipment that would produce? And then to get to that level, you know, you'd have to kind of be already proving yourself in a way, studying certain things, trying to create, trying to make statements, like trying to, you know, trying to make statements is what it is. And with social media, it's like you can create a statement, and a public statement, you know, at any time you want. Like, just now, just before we went on the podcast, I put on my story, you know, that I'm in this place, and now that's a public statement, you know, of just that.
And there's so much of it. I mean, it's just weird. It's a weird time, I think, because of that, because I struggle with that too often, even though I know that there's value for me. Like, when you were saying earlier, like, you wonder if, like, the things that you're doing are interesting. Like, are they actually good ideas? Do you have the patience to, like, bring them to fruition? And that's something that I'm 100% I can, like, feel as well, I guess. Is just, even with the podcast, sometimes I'm like, is what I'm saying here, what am I really, like, what am I doing? Am I just masturbating, basically, like, on air sometimes? Or, like, am I just, like, what is the purpose, the point, you know? And, like, do people, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I like podcasts, because you have to engage with me before I don't throw it in your face. Like, it's not even something that will come up. I guess it will in your Instagram feed if I post about it. Shit. But
no, but yeah.
But generally, it's that's one of the reasons why I like this medium, is like the value, if there is any, is something that I can like just see grow like more naturally. I guess it's not inflated. And I don't want it to be. I think I was listening to an episode of another podcast where they were talking about like unearned fame, and it's like how it's something that you don't want. You know, if you actually are famous but you haven't like worked hard or like did something to get there or whatever it is, you're gonna feel like a fraud because you like know that you didn't, I don't know, whatever. I haven't really experienced this, I don't think, but to an extent, I think the parkour community did offer a certain level of that because it was this really fast booming budding world because of the internet, because of like all this interconnectivity, that you could kind of feel like you were in this like more important role.
More people wanted to look
might
at you and see you and what you were doing. More people that you didn't know wanted to follow your day-to-day, everyday life that made you feel like 100%. Bigger.
Yeah. And that's like, you know, that's like just nitro for the ego,
just
or whatever.
Ego. Yeah.
But partly like, you know, I don't think I succumb to it too terribly or anything, but just like you'll feel like a fraud and you'll resent the people that even are fans of you, because why would they, you know, if you don't feel like you're supposed to be there, then they're dumb for paying attention to you, you know?
That's interesting.
But the reverse of that is also just not giving yourself enough credit too. It's like there's imposter syndrome, which I think I've also like felt, you know, which is, I don't know if you've heard about this too, where you don't give yourself any credit and you don't like allow your accomplishments to bolster you up or whatever and like make you feel like, yeah, like this is where I'm supposed to be. And I think like this whole, you know, whatever, it's all about these stories we're telling each other and ourselves, right? And you're trying to match it with what's real. I think if you're like me or like you, it sounds like we were talking earlier, it's like you want to like see yourself more objectively. Is that accurate?
Yeah. I want to be in touch with what I really am, not what I think I am or what I think I should be. You know, I want to know and I want to feel and be okay and exist in like what is really there, which is never something you can access because you're always in between the past and present, because that's what time is. But it's like, I want to, that is my, you know, what I want. I want to.
Well, and also you're always changing too, right? The whole point of like paying attention to it and trying to grow is so that you're better than you used to be in most ways, hopefully. If not always.
Or realize what you used to be also, you know, because I feel...
Oh, yeah, interesting.
You know, because I feel like a lot of my growth comes from trying to access what I was as a kid, as a child. Like, I have such vivid memories of what it felt like to be in a room when I was a kid. I wasn't paying attention to like what other kids were doing, like playing. If someone saw what I was doing and thought it was interesting and came and like to play with me, I was like, cool, a friend. And I was also kind of like, you don't understand what I'm doing, like go away, or like I'm gonna go, you know, like I was just kind of like in my own thing, and I was discovering the world. And it was, if you wanted to come along with me, great. And if you wanted to come down on my adventure down the street and do my hooligan stuff, cool. If you didn't, I wasn't, you know, and and it's not that I feel like that's changed so much, but I have this like almost a hyper awareness. Like I've experiences built over time, you know, and all that adding together. It's like when I'm in a room now, I have so much more time and experience that I'm carrying in my inner world, you know, and you know, all that. So
yes, a lot of that inner work is setting things down that you're like not needing to be carrying, right? In some ways. Like I picked that thing up and I've been carrying it for 10, 12 years and I don't think it's worth carrying anymore. Why the fuck am I carrying it and put this thing down?
Right. And you were saying something earlier and then I wanted to bring up like how society, like just the way the ideas that we're raised around, you know, like when you're saying, what was it? The imposter syndrome, where you feel like you don't, because you don't belong, or nothing that you do is good enough, or you're afraid of feeling like you're getting boosted up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I have that where it's like being, you know, super into yourself is something that no one wants, you know? Like no one wants someone that's just like
ultimate narcissist.
Yeah.
Just like
yeah. But there's a line, right? Because yeah, you should be able to feel good about yourself. And you should be able to take credit for things, but you should also have an open mind and be receptive to criticism, you know, and then that brings up another thing, because then there's like criticism that's coming from like wanting to bring you down, and then there's like critiques that are coming from a place of like, I want to see you grow, I want to see you get better, this is just what I would do better, you know. There's like there's duality to that too.
Oh, for sure. And it's hard to filter one from the other when you don't know where it's coming from, especially online when it's just comments of just like, who knows? Like a lot of people don't know you. Like it feels like they might when you just read the comment, even if they just could be some Cheeto finger, just like whatever, just super angry or, you know, upset person in their basement.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. It's really odd. I mean, like when you're saying you try to get back to access like things as you were a kid, I had this theory that I was thinking up the other day, because I was thinking about some of the stuff we were talking about before we started recording here, of at least I feel like there's certain addictive personality kind of thing that I don't know that I would even call it that anymore, because I don't think that almost carries too much of a negative connotation. Like I've heard other ways of describing it, which carry other connotations, like, oh, we're built to like worship. We're like worshiping beings.
You say just like repetitive behavior patterns.
Yeah. Just like you have to do things. I guess like the best way to describe it is you have to do things that feel and are bigger than you, or you have to like devote yourself or make things bigger than you. Again, like to avoid that feeling of being too wrapped up and being too narcissistic and things. And I think when you're a kid, like it's so fun and chill and easy in some ways to explore the world, because it's like everything's new, everything's novelty. And then what I was going to relate it to is like, again, the dosage of like certain drugs. It's like, what's healthy for you to be doing for yourself. And it's like when you're a kid, it's like very healthy, I think, it's fine to just be constantly exploring, because you're getting so much out of every little new experience. And then once you stacked it all up or whatever, and now you can recognize certain patterns, then it's really hard to find like new areas for growth in some ways. Does that make sense?
No, you're making complete sense. And I'm just now like what you've said makes me think about things, and I want to just keep going. But yeah, like
fire away.
You know, so taking something you said earlier of like the inner work comes from dropping certain things you've been carrying that you realize maybe you don't need to be carrying. And then it's like, you know, tying that into development is like, when you're a kid, you're going out and you're exploring, and you're kind of in this pure sense of self where you're existing as you in the world exploring. But then you have all these outer kind of influences that are like, you know, whether it's your parents or role models or whatever, that are like, no, don't do it like that. That's not okay. The way that you just decided to handle that situation is not okay. Or the way you are responding to the situation, like emotionally, like it doesn't make sense the way you're responding. And so you're having to, as a kid, be like, okay, well, that was my natural reaction or my natural whatever. And it was wrong. It was like wrong. Okay, so I have to relearn, reshape how to do. And really, now that we're adults, does anyone know really what is right and what is wrong and how to handle things, you know? And you're inheriting, you know, perspectives of the people around you. And now we get to choose who we respect, and we get to choose like-minded people to surround ourselves with to influence our perspective. But as a kid, you're listening to what is right and wrong and what you should and shouldn't. And you're trying to explore, but you're also being told how to explore, you know? And I think that part of growing up and part of the inner work is like, what about me got like bent up,
Mm-hmm.
bent and kind of like rearranged inside of me that maybe actually should not have been rearranged. Maybe that perspective of my mom or that perspective of my older brother or that teacher, like maybe they were trying to give me criticism to bring me down because maybe, you know, I was threatening them in a certain way or I was scaring them in a certain way or whatever with things that they were. Yeah. Now I'm babbling. But.
I mean, no, you're not. Hey, well, now I know that you thought I was babbling.
No, you're
Aha. But no, it's
no,
okay.
I knew that you thought you were babbling.
There you go. Thank you.
There you go.
I agree. Yeah, no, it's definitely a beast because I think this is what I want to segue into too, which would be really good because I think it's something we wanted to talk about. And like the difference that I want to draw, or not draw, but the question I want to pose now is when you're a little kid, like, and you're getting all these external voices, like you're doing this wrong or whatever, or do this way. I mean, mostly I've come to understand that like almost all of them, if not all of them really, come from the place of trying to build you up. And if they didn't, it was because there's something wrong with said person, right? Or like they have insecurity or whatever. And sometimes they're right, you know. Or maybe not right, but I understand. It's not necessarily that I would draw the distinction between like, oh, were they trying to bring me down? It's like more for me. It's been like I understand why they said that, and even if they are right, maybe like my mom wants me to be a lawyer or something. It's because she wanted me to not have to struggle financially and like have to deal with, you know, she wanted a safe. She's like, trust me, you know, if you do this thing, people are going to be, your life's going to be figured out and at least in this domain.
Right.
And you get that. Now I understand like why they would encourage you to do something like that. But when you're a little kid, I was going to say is you don't have as many, you have lots of dreams and stuff. But for me, at least, I don't know how your experience was. I wanted to be everything. Like I wanted to be an astronaut, a movie star, like a fucking, I actually did want to be a lawyer for a little bit because when I started getting into trouble, I was like, you know what? These people out here need to be defended. I wanted to be a defense attorney. I was like, I want to help people get out of jail because I think this is all unfair. And or a doctor or like an architect. Like there's so many
everything
things.
Is so cool.
Everything is dope, you know, and it's so hard to choose. Yeah.
And
so, yeah, what I wanted to segue, I guess, into is like, we're both, I think, in an area, or we spoke about it earlier, where we're like trying to be better at setting goals and stuff for ourselves. At least I am. I don't know if that's true for you. And like really start to commit to things. And like, you know, the paintings that I've made in the past, literal and figurative, is like, I've kind of wandered into some of those things. And I was more or less still being the kid where I was like, all right, I'm just exploring things. And I'm like, oh, look, I found this really fun thing. I'm just going to keep doing it and just going to keep following and chasing this dream because this is the one that's kind of unfolding before me. And that's kind of what parkour had done for me for a very long time and is still doing for me.
It unfolded underneath your feet kind of.
Yeah. I was just like, I was following my heart and things were really working out and I was getting growth down that path. But, now I'm in a little bit more of like a tricky spot again where like, okay, the growth isn't so easy to find in parkour the way that it was. Just like when I was playing with my movement, now I need more intention. I need more time to make that statement, you know, and what I'm doing. And I was thinking
you want to be interacting more.
Huh?
In a way, it's like you want to be interacting with the world more.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, all right, I need to, in a weird way, it's like, I don't even want to try to make this point, I don't think. But like I was going outer world and I was like, I need to go back into the outer world and then further back into the inner world. And then now I've done so much work in the inner world. I'm like, let me be in the outer world for a little bit before I go back to the outer world. I don't know. And the one last thing I wanted to add to that was just like, you know, you don't know much about the history of parkour, I don't think, but
I don't know.
There's this thing in the discipline like that I was thinking about earlier today where these guys that started it, the founding Yamakaze, like the founding fathers, you could say, and mothers of the discipline, were basically doing this training and stuff and really experiencing the outer world, whatever, the middle world, maybe we should call it.
Just the physical
yeah.
world. Yeah, we should probably even define this a little bit better if we're going to keep using it.
Bit. And the middle, and the inner world, like it was very much a philosophy and an engagement and interaction with the environment. Before, they were like for a decade or something, like I should know the timeline better, but before they made any films, like no one tried to make it public, and there was so much there that it's like still people are riding that wave in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I think once you've like come to shore on a wave, if it feels like that, I like really want to like assess more. I don't know, like how do you reorient yourself to like find your next wave that you're going to try to ride or paddle at? I don't know. Now I'm like getting way too across. I'm like surfing and I'm doing parkour somehow at the same time.
Well, I was
like 45 questions in there too.
I try to just grab on to what I have something to say about. The rest I'm like, okay.
Babble.
No,
call me Brooke,
no.
because I babble.
Well, I first wanted to just appreciate parkour for a second, because I think it's such a interesting way of interacting with the world we've built around us. You know, it's like taking our primal animal like self and being like, I want to just climb and run up these buildings that we built, but like, you know, what monkeys do with trees and what squirrels do with trees and what we used to do with the ground just running as kids. You know, it's just taking it to another level, and just I appreciate it so much. And I think maybe that's because as a kid I was super, like, if I had run into parkour in my 12 to 14 years, it would have just been something that I took on. But
it's not too late.
I feel like it is.
No, how old are you?
I'm 26. Like,
oh, get out of here. I know.
I'm not trying to break anything.
You don't have to. I've never broken a bone doing parkour. That might not be true.
I might
have fractured a bone, but I've never been in a cast.
Yeah.
And my worst injuries have been from snowboarding.
Yeah, I'm frightened of snowboarding. People are like, oh, God, it's fun. I'm like, well,
I know what you're saying. Parkour is it is extreme if you want to take it there, but it's not extreme if you don't.
No,
there's plenty of like.
And I think I do miniature parkour in my day-to-day life. Like I take the weird routes. Like instead of just walking on the street, like I'll climb up, or like I'll, you know, like I like to climb up on stuff, and it kind of just makes the boundaries of this like cement world we've built around us kind of just disappear when you're like, I'm not supposed to climb on this, but why not? Like it's here, it's a ledge. I feel like getting up and walking on it, you know?
Yeah, it's sturdy, whatever.
Exactly. Like who says I just have to walk on this sidewalk? It's so yeah, I wanted to first do that. On
behalf of parkour,
thank you, parkour. Parkour.
I mean, I think you'd really enjoy it, to be fair. I think like you'd be surprised too. Like it's a lot of a mental. What kept me in it for longer is what you're talking about was the first like hit off the old parkour pipe. But then what kept me going is the mental growth that I got and the facing of fear and stuff, which is like really integral to the philosophy. And I think that's why it invariably kind of goes in this place where people find it really extreme, is because it is a lot about facing fear and like overcoming what you thought you couldn't do and doing that. And if you get really good at that, then you find out real quick that you can do a lot of crazy shit, because humans are animals. Like you said, we're animals that can do crazy. Like if you saw a monkey do a roof gap, you wouldn't really think twice, because you're like, oh, well, he's a monkey, he knows what's up. But it's like, you're just a pink monkey with less hair, you know? So you can do it. You just have to get in the same mindset. But you can, I agree. Just a little ad for parkour, all you people
parkour
out there.
Fans.
You people out there considering it.
But then you were talking about how do you reorient yourself, and then I also want to tie this back to when we were talking about how do you know when an idea is good, you know, because I feel like it's you know, it's pretty much the same conundrum, you know? And I think that to break down having the process of having an idea, it's like there's the inspiration that gives you the idea, and then there's the in between of like taking it and trying to make it real, and then there's like the time that passes that kind of makes you question, like, is this interesting? Is it like not? And then what I've started to find is if I just I'm like, well, if it is a terrible idea, you know, I'm spending time doing something creative. Like, I'm getting to know myself. I'm getting to know what it is like to have a process. And I think that is what I've been trying to do for myself this year is I've never had problems having ideas, but I have had
always
problems.
the easy part.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's the implementation of it, you
100%.
know? And yeah, I get stimulated by so many different avenues of life. Like, just similar to you, I still want to do everything.
Me
like
too.
I feel like I'm like, I could, you know, yeah. So it's like, okay, now I have to factor in logistically my age, the things that I have already under my belt that I can use, you know, because I don't want to ever just abandon things, because I don't think I've ever done something that's just useless to me as a person, you know? So how do I piece things together in a new way, or in redirect it in a new way, kind of thing. But yeah, I think
it's like you have all this clay. There's no sense in like throwing it out. Like, it's like maybe it's worth reshaping. Is that kind of what you're saying? In some ways.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's still good clay. Like, I know what you mean, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Just like, I feel like the same way. I feel the same way.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't try to discard things either.
Right.
I try to like let's bring it, let's keep whatever momentum and like maybe redirect the momentum, or like find some stillness in it, so then we can like move any direction. But let's not lose it. Let's not discard it.
Yeah. And maybe, you know, I'm trying to come up with a metaphor, but really just when you were speaking about how parkour brought up a lot for you when you started tackling fear, that's threaded through everything. Like, if you like that challenge, like we were both talking about before, where there's an element of us that really appreciates and likes doing things that we're afraid of doing and then overcoming it. I feel like this podcast is one of those moments for me, you know, because I feel like I go through waves of having trouble articulating myself, and so I was kind of nervous. I'm like, you know, hopefully today is a good day for Anabel to articulate her thoughts, or like, hopefully, you know, my mindset's in a place where I'm not constantly questioning everything I'm saying, and I can sit and I can actually like follow through, you know. But that's going off. But yeah, it's like, how do you take the kind of the main threads, you know, of the things that you've been doing and see their value and their presence in other things, you know?
Yeah, 100%. And I think that, I mean, that for this, the podcast is definitely that for me. That's my continuation. And that's like part of what I did with redirecting the momentum that I already had built through movement. And it was also half forced on me because I was dealing with injuries and what, you know, there's lots of interesting things I've discovered about that like some of that was psychological, and just recognize, even like somewhere deep down, I recognized that like I need to go inward. Like, I'd spent all this time in the out world, or the out world, whatever, either or. And I was like, I have to go, now I have to go to the basement to like do some work. And for a minute, it took me a while to just even recognize that, you know?
To even, yeah. And then now, can I ask you,
Please.
When you recognize that, like, what does it look like for you to go to the basement?
It's messy.
But okay, the basement's messy, but
yeah,
did you just have to turn around, or, you know, what was the process of, how does it feel to be in the basement? How do you get there?
I think it was asking better questions was like one thing I was starting to do better. I think journaling was really an interesting addition to my life, because the way I think out loud or especially think just like when I'm not speaking, I think really crazily fast and laterally, just explosive thought.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah. I relate.
Like ideas
yeah.
like ideas are easy. Hey, you're an idea guy? Hey, guy that goes, I've got ideas. I'm an idea man. Hey, you useless. Everyone's got ideas.
Yeah.
Just, the implementation is the part. But like, so when I started writing, I realized that I slowed my thoughts down even more. Just by the nature of like, all right, it takes longer to write them out, and the way I thought was different, and it kind of like was revealed deeper thoughts than the things that I could say really quickly or the things that I could think almost instantly.
Mm-hmm.
So that was helpful. And then again, it's sort of following that fear always, just like, what am I afraid of? Not knowing what's on the other side of that, there's almost always growth on the other side of that. Like, so just pushing more into the unknown. Mm-hmm. So it didn't have to be a complete 180, but it had to be a shift in direction, because I guess I felt like I knew what my challenges felt like. For me, movement in that domain specifically, like the things I was doing, jumping and whatever, I felt like I could, I knew what I could do jumps wise. Mm-hmm. And so then it became a thing where I was like, I'm not growing by doing more and more jumps. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, where am I going to go? I'm like, well, I haven't really looked at, my relationships with my family, or I haven't really looked at my relationships with, women, and like how I want them to be better, like, like in a partner scenario. And,
that's the hardest one.
There's some shit there. Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one.
Yeah. For everybody.
It's for everybody. So I was like, all right, what areas, like I'm really confident as a mover in a lot of ways, but what am I not so confident at? And so I guess it was just finding all of these, and I realized there's tons of work. Like there's plenty of directions to go in. So
there's so much, which is what is exhilarating about life. It's like,
partially, sorry to bring it back to the surfer analogy, but it's just like, and part of that was also getting over because you can be paralyzed by the amount of work and everything that's done. So I think another big thing, like aside from all of that, is just maybe just start trying to catch waves. Just start doing whatever. I just would start opening doors. Doesn't matter if they're like, oh, this one feels lame. Like I could do something bigger than this, but at least I'm doing something.
I think it's like, how long do you give something time to unravel? I think that for me, it's like, I need to realize that you can try something and get curious about it, and if it doesn't start to give you something back to you after, like, and it depends on what we're talking about, like project versus like a life decision versus, whatever, but there has to be kind of like a time where you cut off, okay, this is no longer worth my time. This project is no longer worth my time. Clearly this is, not getting anywhere. And I used to do that way too fast. Like I would kind of have an idea, or like, think about something and try it out. And I would try it out for not long enough for it to actually be something I was experiencing or something I was developing. And I would get, just doubt it, too soon. So I think I've started to give things more time. Like I can't know what I don't know, and I have to give myself the space to experience that time of like figuring it out is where it is, the work is, and the interesting things come, is like, if we're bringing it, let's, take it to like a skill or something that you're learning, like you get shown a coordination drill, and then all of the work in between is what's interesting, and then you get it. But some things take you way longer to get than other things. Some things you pick up right away and you're like, oh, okay, cool. Like I got this pattern down, or I got this jump down, or whatever. And some things just take longer. And The trick is knowing like how long do you give something before you're like, maybe I can't do this, or maybe I shouldn't do this,
Yeah. It's like, it's tough to pick your battles in that way sometimes because, I want to be a pro singer too.
Do you really?
I don't know. I think I have to like find out, I guess, if I really wanted to do that by putting in the work. Because that's the other thing is like you can get, like you said, how do you know? I think I enjoy performance and singing enough that maybe I could do that. Maybe. I don't think I've had enough experience to compete with people that have been doing it since they're 4 or whatever. But another thing that I've realized is like, well, and again, what the fuck do I know? But part of my parkour journey shifting and like getting to like a pinnacle of sorts and then being like, okay, it's never ending. Like there's always going to be, no matter what you achieve, if you achieve the coordination drill or whatever, like, okay, now what? Mm-hmm. So taking more time and like digesting things has been like way more relaxing in my life than trying to like get to the goal as fast as possible. Like, let's just, I've allowed myself to savor the journey, and I'm like, all right, I'll get a little bit into this without needing to go balls deep, like first day, and just being like, all right, committed. Mm-hmm. It's like, I can test the waters. And it's a lifelong journey. If it is a thing that, like with movement and stuff, like it's a lifelong thing for me. Like I know that this is something I'm carrying with me forever. Mm-hmm. So
yeah,
I don't know. I guess like if I'm going to get into singing and stuff, it's like, all right, if I'm going to be into it for my whole life, if it's really that valuable, then there's no rush.
Right. And
singing is ridiculous though. Like, come on, guys, I'm just teasing. But,
no, just
but you might see me on your next stage. I don't know.
Open mic night. Brandon
mic.
Douglas.
Hey, I'm perfecting my voice through the podcast, getting some down low notes. And
what do the up high ones sound like? Yeah, you got some work to do.
Pretty good. Yeah. Okay. Well, I can't hit the high ones without screaming at you.
Yeah, don't do that. Yeah, that's also something that I think about with if life was just kind of like an arrangement of puzzle pieces of interests and hobbies and things, which do you choose to be the moneymaker? What aspect of what you're interested in or like doing do you choose as the moneymaker? Mm. And where do you put other pieces of the puzzle? And like with singing, it's like, is an example of something that it takes so much work and dedication, and like there's so much that you have to do to even kind of make it, right? So with something like that, if you're not like, I have to be like, a singer or else life. Like this is exactly. Then
you're not going to be relevant.
And then
to make money.
What's the rush? Exactly. But, to make money. Then what's the rush in developing the skill of it? It's like do it for when you like. When it's fun, when you have the time, do it, to feed your soul, and do it as much as you want. But it doesn't have to be this thing you go like full in, I'm all in, I just jumped in, I just gave up everything I was doing.
Guys, I announced my retirement. I'll see you on the stages of the world. I'm becoming a singer. I'm going to be on the subways playing guitar.
Yep.
And belting it. and all kinds of instruments. I'm gonna get some looping pedals. You see me out there. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'll go a cappella.
That's the way to go.
That's the way to go. Then I don't need equipment, and I'm just
no overhead.
Yeah, that's what's up.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, it's just tough. Yeah. I guess I want to circle back and like, what about you with where you're at and like how are you? Because so just to combat like what we've just been saying a little bit, it's like it's good to just let it be easy and like let it grow and let it be natural. Mm-hmm. But I think that there's also a necessity, like if you don't have that money train figured out, and even if you do, what are you really applying your energy towards? Mm-hmm. And like how do you focus that in a healthy way, because if you're about the personal growth and stuff, it's really easy to not be putting your energy towards some things that are good. I think I was thinking about the yin yang symbol.
So wait, you're saying if you put a lot of energy into personal growth, it's easy to put energy into things that aren't good?
Sorry, no. If you care about personal growth, then you have to really be paying attention to like how you're doing it, I guess is what I'm saying, because you can convince yourself that, you know, like again, with the how do you know it's a good idea? Like, how do you, I don't know. We're kind of circling, but.
No, I think with personal growth, it's more of like an intuitive feeling, you know, because I think with that, you can trust that the things that you are wanting to get better at, it's coming from like a need, you know, instead of like trying to create something you don't know yet. Because for me, at least, like personal growth is like, I need to understand this or like in order to move on to the next level of myself, like it becomes very clear what the next layer is for me always. And then it's like, that's how do I tackle that layer? Like for me right now, it's being comfortable speaking in front of a room in like almost a teacher setting. But what is that really? That's me, you know, the fear of that comes from the fear of being seen, and also the doubt that what I have to say is worth sharing in a way that is like lessons, or that I have something to really say, you know. So how do I work on that, you know? And for me,
how do you work on that?
Well, it actually started with, it's interesting, you were saying that to go into your basement, like writing kind of was the key to unlock that door for you. Like for me, it was video journaling, because I could always write. I can write like I'm drinking water. Like I can write like my feelings out, you know. I can dance, and for me, dance is just existing in the feeling. It's just existing in it. I'm not saying, you know, I'm not stating or making a statement or like deciding anything. It's just like, this is what this feeling feels like. But for me, it was using my voice and like being able to express it through words. So I started video journaling myself, because I was like, if I can't say what I feel out loud, then how am I ever going to articulate anything that I want to say to anybody else, you know? And so just getting comfortable hearing my own voice, and then getting comfortable watching it, and also starting to like move past the discomfort of being on camera too. That was kind of a whole other layer, but now I'm like, I want to do some theater. Like I want to put myself out there where I'm still not really, it's not really me, but I'm gaining the presence, the confidence of like, you know, performing with my voice versus performing with my body, you know.
I feel you big time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of, yeah. I mean, there's definitely a lot of parallels for me. Like, I'm like, all right, yeah. That's partly why this started as well. Journaling, the podcast is a video journal of sorts.
Totally.
And it's weird because I wasn't as aware of it as you seem to have been. I just started doing it. Like, again, I just followed that instinct in a way. And then I was like, holy shit, I'm like doing this because I need to do this. But that's wild. And then who knows what the next layer is. I'm terrified because I think the stronger you get, the more the challenges can actually be larger and more intense. Like if you if you build yourself up, I've said bolster like 45 times. I've never said it. And then all of a sudden today, it's my favorite word. I'm going to have a word of the day and it's bolster today. But yeah, the more you're able to like confront and duel and handle these things, then it seems like the more life can throw at you.
Yeah.
That's okay.
And that's why the inner work is so important, because if you want to keep going, there are things that are subconsciously like behavior patterns, coping mechanisms, things you do to deflect, you know, that get in the way of you becoming what you want to become and what you and what even is that? Like wanting to become what you want to become is like wanting to interact with the world at 100%, you know, because I feel like I'm interacting with the world at, it changes, but I think I'm in like the 60%, you know, of being like vulnerable, raw, just like Anabel, all, you know, just, and that can look so different, you know, because like you were saying earlier, we change constantly, but yeah, like that's what it is to me.
Or
and
maybe you're 100% in those areas where you're comfortable, but across the board, it's like averaging. Is that how you could look at it? Because it's like in dance, you're probably so comfortable. You're probably in the 90s or higher.
I don't agree. No.
Maybe you're at 20%. Maybe I'm totally way off here. Okay, well, but I understand what you're saying. It's like, I think that's, if you're looking at your stat points, you're like, all right, I'm about a 7 or an 8 or a 9, or I feel like a 10 in this one category, but I'm a 2 down here. So.
Yeah. And then like, let's say you have 4 columns that you can see, you know, and in 2 of the columns, you're ranking pretty high. And in the other 2, you're ranking pretty low. And I would say that for you were saying that you were looking at relationships with your family and like relationships just in general as those that are stacking kind of low. And then when we're talking about how do you kind of decide what the next wave is, it's not adding more rows and, you know, just being like, well, maybe this row works out, and you try it out and you kind of hit like a 3 for a year, and then you're like, nah, and then you move on and you add another row, because then you're adding so much to have to level out, you know. It's like, how do you look at what you already have, get better in the categories you want to maintain? Maybe you drop some of them, you know, maybe, but I think that's kind of how I grow, I guess.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's interesting way to look at it. I would agree that that's probably how I do things in a way, because you only have a certain amount of energy, so you can't just keep adding rows for infinitely.
Yeah.
But if you have a really strong base, then I think it like you create like a bell curve for yourself, and then the more can be included in that middle section.
Well, yeah, I think, when you're saying you can
poles,
add,
like you need a few tent poles to hold up a big tent. But like a
and
3 is not a
can
tent
get
pole.
Bigger,
a 10's a tent pole. Okay, so
or
get
even
yourself a 10,
6 or 7.
Like 2 10s is the biggest tent you can build, right? If you think about it as like a tent thing. I like this tent thing a lot right now. And like the more 10 stacks that you have, the bigger your tent is. And like, you can get little ones, but really if you go deep into like certain categories that you're trying to grow on, it'll probably make it easier to raise another tent pole.
Yeah, or even looking at it as like foundation layers, like stacking from the bottom up, you know, like having a stronger lower stack of stuff that you've put work and time into getting better at, and you've learned and done the personal growth that it takes to like maintain it, you know, and you know how to take care of those things for yourself. Then you can add another layer because you've spent enough time creating the foundation, and you don't really need to put that much thought into it anymore because it's become kind of your routine. It's become just kind of how you live your life, and then you can add another layer. And I think that we can circle that back to like the stronger your layers are, the more and more you can stack, but you have to put in the time, and you have to, you know, put in the work to make those layers sustainable for more weight.
Bring it on. That's all I'm saying. All right. I'm ready. I'm ready for a little more weight.
You're ready for more weight?
A little bit. Well, yeah.
Are you ready for more weight, or are you starting to like strengthen your foundation?
I'm doing both. I'm strengthening my foundation is really what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I'm taking a breather from certain things. And after, we're at episode 50 today, which is pretty exciting.
That's super
When I get to
exciting.
52, that's that's a year's worth of content that I put out with this podcast. and I might take a week off or two just to like recalibrate and like see where we go from there. Because again, I think like what we've been saying is like, I really want to
set goals,
set the right thing. And like, I don't want to be just kind of going off. I mean, it's been working out though, like randomly just hit you. We talked last night and I was like, yes, I needed a guest for tomorrow.
Yeah.
And there's a guest.
Yeah.
So things do work out, but I think, you know, if I'm being dead honest, I know I can do more in this. Like I'm trying to get this to a 10. I'm trying to get like my ability to produce and host this podcast to a 10. And I'm probably at like a, let's not say.
Yeah.
Let's say, I mean, I would say a 4 or something.
So what are the themes or the topics of conversation you feel like you want to, you know, let's say this year, this 52 podcasts is like kind of just the sketch, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like what are you going to take from it? What do you want the next layer to be of this? Like,
let's see. Good question. The first year has been very much about a lot of the same stuff we're talking about, just like the journey of like starting the journey in a way. It's like, what does it mean to really like kind of focus your life into some ways, but also at least that's what it's kind of turning out to be. At the beginning, it was very much just like talking about relevant parkour things. But I realized that, and I've realized from the beginning that I want this to be about more than what's happening in the parkour community specifically,
solely,
but
right.
just like how are we all, like not just me and the parkour, the world of parkour, or the you know, the community of friends and practitioners and people like you that I know here, like how can I like build everyone in my life? Like how can I really take this to a point where I can offer something? Like I really want to grow the audience in a way that I can bring people that come on a platform to really like share something bigger and like what they want to do and hopefully inspire and help people. But also I'm torn because like I like to have a silly goose time at the same time. And that's the other half of this podcast is like me just talking about like goofy shit. And I don't know that I have to pick, but I have to like figure out really, you know, what it can be and stuff. But
yeah. Well,
I wish I had a better answer.
No, I don't think no, I think that was a perfect answer. I'd say you can have both. You know, what's to say you only have one podcast? You know, who's to say that? Maybe you have a more goofy, and then you have this podcast that you are starting to develop more of like a serious, not serious, but just like frank, you know, like what's really here, like what we were talking about before, you know, trying to get into the process of people and just really be able to speak to what's in the present, you know. And I think it's just fine-tuning more topics of conversation. And I also feel like the focus shouldn't be on trying to bring in the audience. It should be on figuring out what the podcast is, because that will build the correct audience.
Yeah,
you know.
No, I was thinking that even just now. I was like, you know what? I don't know if that's really what I want. I'm like, I do want their audience to be there.
Yeah.
Eventually, but like,
but
that's not
come,
the
right?
aim, right? Yeah,
that'll
that's not
come,
really like. That's like the distant thing, and I don't know how to get there still. But like, I know that would be good for me and for everyone that got to come on. So that's like something that I should shoot for.
Yeah, you should keep that energy.
But yeah, like really, and I think I've tried to stay true to that. Is like I'm just here to like interact with you more than I am here for any. Like when I have someone on, it's like that's really all. It's every episode is in and of itself valuable to me, and regardless of whoever listens or what they take from it. But it's tough. If I had 2 podcasts, fuck. I'm already like spread kind of thin right now, so I don't know if I could justify that without losing quality. But I want to just keep going, I guess, in some ways. I just kind of want to keep going. I don't know. Maybe it'll reveal itself more to me.
I really think, like, what's the rush?
Yeah.
You know, with what's the rush with needing it to be what it's going to be now already? You know, it's only been a year.
It's only been a year, exactly. And it's that patience. And like you said, it's like, give it the time.
Yeah, because
and also,
I think,
if it became something crazy tomorrow, then boom, now I've got that imposter syndrome up the ass, because I'm going to be like, I don't even know what to do with it yet. Like,
right.
Clearly. So
yeah.
If for some reason it blew off the chain, then I wouldn't even know where to go with it in some ways.
Right.
So yeah, we're just still figuring it out.
Which is so cool. It's like, you know, finding the process of creating this podcast, which is this new thing that you're trying, and it's also a redirection. It's kind of summing up everything that has been in this conversation, you know.
Yeah.
So
well, thanks for coming on. This is another thing that, like, I think it's great, is like I do know that this is one thing it feels like I'm drawn to, is like having more people like you that are local, or just like artists, people that like have these kinds of thoughts and whatever. Like, I've always enjoyed talking to you and other people, like, about these weird meta physical kind of things.
yeah.
But
yeah. Yeah, thanks for having me on. It was really cool to just get to, you know, speak into this really fat microphone that's sitting really close to my face.
Eventually, you're going to have one like this, because that is insane. Like, I can only see like half your face right now.
Yeah.
It's absurd. And they had a smaller windscreen for it. And then they sent a bigger one. And I was like, well, I got to use the big one, because clearly
it's just kind of like, you know, protection. How you can always see your nose, but like your brain just kind of starts to fog it out. It's slowly, the microphone has slowly started to kind of feel like a nose. Yeah, exactly. Disappeared, but
we're happy to have you. We really appreciate it. And I think whatever people take from this, like, I think there's a lot of people that are on the same journey. You know, I think this is just huge for our generation. We're all trying to figure this stuff out, and we're all trying to do something with our lives that's more meaningful than, you know, what we were scolded and told to do, maybe from people generations prior. So hopefully we all figure it out.
We will.
We will. So what did I say? Oh yeah, the moral of the story is start a podcast, do video journaling, and
and don't judge yourself.
Okay. Perfect. Thanks, Anabel. Bye.
Bye.